What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Ryan Hafey with Hafey Digital here. Welcome to the Hafey Digital Podcast, a show for creators, makers, and doers, where my goal is to help you make to the max. And today is the 10th episode of the Hafey Digital Podcast. And we've got a special one for you. We actually have our first guest, which we will be talking to live via Skype. Let's roll that intro. All right, it'll be a miracle if this entire episode goes smoothly because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of balls to juggle here. But we have a guest today. His name is Brendan Halbohm. I hope I said that right because we just talked about that. But Brendan is an entrepreneur / YouTuber. I first met him in the creator retreat that we did back in December with Jevin Dovey and Levi Allen. Really cool guy, and figured we'd get him on the podcast and talk to him a little bit. So without further ado, Brendan, welcome to the Hafey Digital Podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. Okay, everything looks good. I think everyone can hear you. So I think we are underway. Thank you for joining us. And by the way, for anyone listening or watching, if you're interested in how all this setup works, I'm going to be going over all that in the next episode. So this whole Skype setup is a little bit new to me. So like I said, we'll see how it goes in this episode. But Brendan, thank you for coming on the show. Take some pressure off me here and talk about yourself for a little bit. Just give me kind of the brief history of Brendan Halbohm. Who are you? What do you do? And what are you all about?
Certainly. So about 3.5 years ago, I started a candle company called Made Candles because I had a mission to feed kids in Honduras. I used to live there. I used to work with missionaries there. And I had a mission of my own, which was to actually feed these kids and give them something that could help them get to live a full life. And so in about 5 months, I raised enough money to ship 1 million servings of food to Honduras. And it was pretty awesome. It was a 40-foot high cube container. And I got $350,000 worth of food actually donated. And all I had to cover was the shipping. All of my business was started. And I've been doing photography and video for about 17 years now. But it was more of a side gig, something that I just did as a hobby. And it was a passion of mine. And about 2.5 years ago, I started doing it full time, really. I bought what I think is one of the best cameras, 1DX Mark II, and it really launched my business really quickly. Within 1 month, I made enough money to pay the camera, a couple lenses, and a bunch of gear, and away I went. And now, actually, it's crazy because in the last 2 months, I've actually gone to that I did not expect at all, which is I travel 1 to 2 weeks a month for all over the place with a company called Inkwells, who is actually housed right upstairs from where I am. But we work with Adidas, New Era, Lexus, companies all over the place. Even next week, I'm going to Chicago to cover the NBA All-Stars game.
That's cool.
So it's pretty awesome to see where just, doing something good for others led to something that I totally did not expect, which is a full-time job working for myself.
That's awesome. And speaking of Made Candles, I have one of your candles here. Some of you may remember in a previous episode, Brendan was nice enough to send a little swag box with some candles and also this comb, which now actually stays in my backpack because it is my travel beard comb, and it's excellent. It's like thick metal. Also got a bottle opener, which could come in handy for sure. So the candle, by the way, this one's great. I love this. What was the other scent you sent me off the top of my head? I can't remember the. It's like the.
Was it Oak Moss and Amber?
That one's definitely my favorite. I love the way that smells. But thank you for those. I want to talk a little bit about the creator retreat that we went on. As I mentioned, that's where I first met you. And for me, that was a very transformative trip. Just, sort of personally and professionally, it helped me to kind of rethink and recalibrate what I was doing as far as just YouTube and even, my decisions as it relates to my side work. So I just want to kind of hear your perspective. Why did you want to do this creator retreat also, and what did you take away from it?
Well, for me, I had gotten to know Levi Allen for prior, and I took a course of his online in May of last year, and it was all about storytelling. And it actually really helped me to up my game as far as how I pitched to companies, how I showed them what I could do. And it took my ability in video, as far as like that specific niche, to go from charging $500 a video to $10,000 a
Wow.
video. And it changed my life. I got to meet this guy. I want to know more about what he has to offer. And as far as him advertising the retreat, I got to know Jevin Dovey as well. And the stuff that he teaches is amazing. It's all about the algorithm of YouTube, the back end, things that you have to know. And he's like a wizard at it. And I didn't even have any clue at all about how good he was at it until we were actually
I didn't either. I was the
there
same
at the
way.
retreat. And for me, it was like actually the first time in my filmmaking career where I was actually makers and actually learning filmmaking from something other than YouTube or an online course, which to me is kind of the same. You just pay money
Right.
for it.
So what did you, I mean, how did you change the way that you were doing things, and what kind of things did you change as a result of that? Because I'll talk a little bit about mine as well, because there was a lot that I switched around. But what about for you specifically? And by the way, for anyone watching or listening, I've got a link to Brendan's YouTube channel, or at least one of them, in the description below. Go check him out. But you have multiple YouTube channels. Is that correct? Do you still have a bunch, or did you? Yeah. What did you do with those?
Yeah, so I really have four main YouTube channels. I've got my personal, which I actually just launched at the beginning result of the retreat that we went on. But then I also have my own podcast, which I haven't been keeping up on a lot because for me, it's all about being in person with my guests. And so it's a lot harder to get out and about. Like one of them's in Salt Lake City, one of them's in Sheridan, Wyoming. They're all over the place.
Right.
And so for me, I have to travel to them. So it ends up being like once a month. But then I also have a separate YouTube channel for Made Candles, which I'm starting to create more content for. It'll probably be one video a month as of now. And then I have what I would just call all of the videos that I create for my, as like a way to showcase my work. And I just keep that separate. And it really doesn't have any followers, but it's a way where I can then link those videos to my website in different
Sure.
places.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think for me, the creator treat, and you can tell me if this is the same kind of thing for you too. It's I think with YouTube, I was looking more when I first started, was looking for more for a creative outlet. I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on myself, um, and I just wanted it to be something fun. But the retreat for me at least helped me realize that um, if I wanted it to become anything, which ultimately I do, like I want it to, I want to be actually to be
Mm-hmm.
able to grow it into, it sounds bad to say it, but to monetize it, but at least, be able to potentially use it as a revenue generating option. And the trip helped me learn that A, it's possible to do it. B, um, there's a lot more that goes into it than I originally anticipated. But like it made me realize that I actually want to go out of my way to try to do it versus just doing something that I upload every now and then, because that's not gonna result in anything. So, I decided that trip was what kind of led me to decide that, okay, this year I'm gonna pull back on some of the side work that I'm doing, the freelance stuff that I've been focusing on. And I've said this a few times on the podcast that this is kind of my plan for this year, but I want to pull back on that, and I want to start focusing on YouTube more. I want to start focusing on the content that I create. And the reason for that ultimately was so that I could, the goal was to build my brand online and to build kind of my bank of knowledge and bake my bank of content to where I can have a little bit more control and be able a little bit more control over the projects that I end up doing, as well as
Mm-hmm.
being able to kind of pick and choose and charge a little bit more for what I'm doing. Because right now, a lot of the work that I do is local businesses, small businesses, doing some social media content for them that isn't incredibly creatively inspiring. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's for me, like it's almost like this year's almost going to be like a sabbatical for me. I don't know. I don't know if any of that resonates with you.
Yeah, definitely. For me, like like what you said, like the consistency is huge. I started out the year and I I just reached out to everybody I knew and I was able to grow my YouTube channel to 100
That's
subscribers
great.
in 1 month. But that's because I uploaded a bunch of videos. I collaborated with others, case videos from our retreat, which in turn interacted with you and the other guys. And I really think like growing a personal brand has to be surrounded by collaborating
Right.
with others, because as you their followers will want to know what you're doing, your followers will want to know what they're doing, and subscribe to each other, follow each other. And like a lot of YouTubers who are growing, that's how they're finding their customers, or their customers are finding them, is the fact that the consistency then grows their skills. And from that, clients or potential clients see their skills online and they're like, something similar to that for me. And I think that's huge,
Yeah.
because like for you, the quality of video and what you're producing can only get better. It's
Right.
great right now, but as you're learning your skills, as you're putting your podcast together more and more, and as you're creating other content on your personal channel, people are going to notice the
Right.
difference. And like even for me, a year ago, I look back at something that I created a year ago, and I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
horrible.
I've done the same exact thing. So I'm curious, when you hear about, there's a lot of YouTube videos online from established creators, and they'll say things, they'll have videos like how to get started on YouTube, what you should do, um, and while I think those are great and they're motivational for a lot of aspiring creators, I think it may even be better to have kind of a perspective from, I mean, to be quite honest, both you and I are relatively new creators. We may have been around in the space for a while, but we don't have these huge numbers like a lot of these big guys like the McKinnons and or the Jevon Dovies and Levi Allens. Um, but starting for us is, no easier than starting on YouTube for someone who's just getting into it. So if you had to give some tips for people who are just starting out, what would you say to someone who's just getting ready to launch on Instagram or on YouTube?
I would say the first thing is definitely find your niche. Like it starts with your passion, but then if you have too many passions, you could be like, I don't know what to do, and then you don't do anything. So really it's just like figuring out, okay, what is my main passion, or how can I put together my say top three passions and make them have a cohesive flow so it makes sense if I'm posting things about those different topics, and then just stick with those things. As far as YouTube goes, people love to follow a vein of thought that actually is consistent. It keeps going in that same stream. Like for Peter McKinnon, he does a lot of random things, but it all ties back to photography and video. So if he's talking about magic, he's filming that magic. Here's how I'm filming it. And so people who follow him are all about film and photography. And for me, like I'm all about makers, entrepreneurs. I'm about encouraging. I can probably get away with talking about some random things, like my last video is about blogging. It has nothing to do with photo video. It has nothing to do with being a maker, so to speak. But being a blogger is being a maker. You're creating something. And most bloggers want to see themselves as entrepreneurs, people who are creating something for themselves that pays to be financially free. And so, like, anyway, coming back to like the main thing is find your niche and then reach out to people, your family, your friends, and get them to follow you, get them to watch your videos, because in the end you really want people who love and care for you to actually care about
Yeah.
what you're creating. Because if you're creating content, it needs to be something that people
Right.
care about, and it needs to be something that if you don't create it, people actually
Yeah.
miss.
I think the advice that I would give to anyone, and it's kind of the cliche advice, but it's really just start. Like I think, and I think because with YouTube, um, you know, YouTube's one of the things I like to do every now and then is I'll go and find a big creator, and then I'll go to all their videos and I'll look at like their very first videos. And assuming that these people have not deleted
Mhm.
any of their early content. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna throw up this little subscribe and follow animation that I just made, which you can't see, Brendan, at the moment, but I'm popping it up on the screen there because it's cool and I wanted to feature it. Anyway, um, I like to look at some of the old videos that creators first started out with because it gives you an opportunity to see their progression over time. Most likely
Mhm.
there's no one on YouTube who started out with a super highly polished, beautiful video and their content stayed consistent throughout. Everyone's content grows and it morphs and it changes.
Right.
And actually this is timely because if you remember Wesley, who was also on the creator retreat, he actually posted his first vlog today. Wesley, I remember, yeah, he
Really?
just earlier today he posted it, which is really cool. Went over and gave him a little comment on YouTube. But Wesley, I remember from the
Okay.
retreat, he was just a great storyteller. Just not as we were sitting around the campfire or whatever, he would just tell stories, and everyone was just locked on what he was saying. And I remember just stopping him at one point. It's like, dude, why aren't you doing this on camera? And it took him a little bit. It's been about a couple months now, but he did it, and he posted up his first video, and for what it was great. So kudos to him.
Hmm.
And from here, as long as he stays consistent, he can only go up from here, and the quality's only going to get better. So back to my point, if you start, you just start, and then let it grow. You can build it from the ground up. You don't have to come in with a full-fledged plan and content outline and this and that. You can build on it over time. And as you do, people will follow you along and they'll see that progression. And, that's, yeah, that's it. So, but
Yeah.
I want to go back to, because one of the things that you do is you make candles on the entrepreneurship subject. And it's how did you get into that? I remember you said you wanted to make money for kids in Honduras, but like kind of go back to that a little bit
Mhm.
because there's not too many people out there that I can't say that I know too many candle makers. So I just kind of want to hear the story about made candles a little bit more.
Sure. So actually, before I actually moved to Honduras for 3 months prior to this. And before I moved there, a friend of mine, she was like, "Hey, I'm trying to learn how to make candles, and I want to invite a bunch of people over. So, do you want to come over and make a couple candles and see how the process works?" It sounds fun. And at the time, I was living down in Warren, Pennsylvania, and there wasn't a whole lot else to do in the middle of
Right.
winter. So we made some candles. And then I ended up in Honduras. I came back, and it was one of the first things that I thought. I was like, I can do that. And it's pretty cost effective as far as once you buy all of the materials needed in order to produce a candle, you can actually make a decent how you go about it.
Right.
So that's essentially how I got into making candles. But it is a passion of mine now because it's something that pretty much everybody uses. They like to give as gifts. And what my niche now in the candle making realm is actually doing custom candles for companies. So I private label them so that I can sell them as their own. Nobody knows that I made them, but they have their own branding, their own website and information on them, and they don't have to go out and buy all the supplies to make candles. I just do it for them.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that hits on a point too that I think about often is and just kind of general life advice. Like the only way that you can really truly like find if you're in a position where I'm feeling like Gary V right now, but if you're in a position where you're stuck and you don't know where you're going and what you want to do, it's because you haven't tasted enough. Again, to use a Gary V line, you gotta go out and try things and see what sort of piques your interest. And in your case, you went out and you're like, yeah, screw it, I'll try to make some candles, and then it turned into a business for you. So that's cool. I like that. Um, so, as far as let's say you're approached by someone who is interested in starting their own business, maybe they know, maybe they've found their passion, maybe they're like, "Hey, I make homemade dog food." What would be some tips that you would give them to kind of launching that business and getting it up and running?
I say the cost of your product. A lot of people they don't actually know how much it costs for the materials to like, oh, it's approximately this, and you'd be surprised how far off they really are. Like,
Oh no. Hold on. Sorry to interrupt, but we're getting some glitchiness. We're our first bout of technical issues are kicking in. Let's see. I'm wondering if there's anything on my end that I can do to kind of fix that. Might be a connection issue on one of our ends. I'm not sure, but let's give me a little more audio. Let's see if we can hear you now.
how's that? Am I sounding now?
I can hear you. But it's in and out. It's kind of just sort of that crackly, kind of broken audio that we're getting from you.
It might be the internet connection here. I'm not sure.
It's okay. Well, let's power through. Keep going again, and let's see what we can we'll see what we can get from you.
Sure. We're talking about
so just tips that you would give to someone who's looking to kind of get their business up and running.
Oh yeah, so it's a product-based business. Know the cost of your materials and what goes to actually produce the end product. Because I would guess that like $6 or $7 when I priced out everything, like literally finite detail. I figured out like $3 a candle to make off by like $3, and that would affect charging how much I thought I could charge, and it actually cost me money because I turned away clients thinking, "Oh, I'm making money on this." When in reality, I pulled my money per
Hold on, sorry, cutting you off again. Let me try this. We're gonna call you back. Let me hang up on you. We're gonna call you back and see if that'll fix the connection here. Hold on, 1 second. That's okay. That's okay. I was expecting this. This is fine. Everything's fine. These are the challenges you run into when you are not only live hosting a podcast, but also producing it as well. So, like I said, a lot of balls to juggle, but it's all good. Let's try calling Brendan back and see if we can get him. Okay. Oh, we got a big Skype logo on the screen.
How's that?
Okay. I see you. Let me make your screen a little smaller here. There we go. All right. Give me some audio again. Let's see if we can hear you.
So, did you hear anything at all that I said prior to this?
Let's go over it again because while I got most of it, it was still pretty in and out. So anyway, business tips for someone just getting started.
Hey, this is fun. If you're a products-based business product, like for me, when I started out, I thought my candles were costing me $7 to produce, and so I thought I had to charge like $12 or $14 wholesale in order to make any money. But in reality, when I actually priced out every little increment of the materials needed to produce a candle, it only cost me like less than $3. So it was a huge difference. And a lot of people make that mistake where they're producing something, especially if it's a product, they just kind of guess about how much it costs them. So they either way overcharge and lose out on clients because they're charging too much, or they charge too little and actually in the end don't even make any money because they don't realize that, hey, I have to charge this much more than the cost of my materials in order to pay for my website, my rent, my insurance, to pay myself, all of those things. And that's why they say, 90% of businesses fail within the first 2 years, is because they don't really know what they're doing. And there's not really a whole lot of adequate teaching out there unless you go to business school to learn how to run your own business. It's kind of sad. And I had to, how do you say, like reinvent the wheel on all of this, trying to figure out how to run it because there's no way to learn it. You YouTube things, and there are like a million videos on how to shoot photography, but there's none on how to cost out your product or how to do your taxes. And so that's actually something that I'm working on, producing an online course for entrepreneurs on every little detail on how you can start your own small business. because I feel like it's something that, like, it cost me a ton of money to learn a lot of different things along the way, and I lost out on a lot of clients because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And if you start a business that isn't product based, say you want to start your own photography, make sure that you're not overcharging, and definitely don't charge more than you're worth. A lot of people think that if they just buy a DSLR camera, it makes them a photographer. But in reality, that just makes you a consumer. And it takes a lot of time to learn photography. I started out on a film camera like 17 years ago. And it taught me a lot about how to properly.
Got my grandparents' film camera here.
It taught me a lot about how to take a good picture, because when you're shooting with film, you don't have the option to see the picture as you're taking it, or see each individual picture right after you took it. No editing involved. Like, there's so many people that call themselves a photographer, but in reality, they're just taking crappy photos and then spending 10 hours editing that photo. And that doesn't make you a photographer. That just makes you an editor. So, like, knowing your craft really well before you start charging what you think you're worth, because you can't charge what Peter McKinnon, like, 3 weeks after you buy your first DSLR camera. It's not going to happen, and no one's going to hire you. And so, like, knowing what you're worth and knowing the cost of what you produce is going to help you in the long run to be able to, like, make a good income.
And once you are at that level where you're like, okay, I know my worth, I know that I'm skilled, I've got the product, I'm ready to go, how do you get those first clients?
Like, say you're a photographer or a videographer, just go out, like, shoot every single day for fun, to hone your craft. Literally, my camera's in my hand every single day. I don't leave my house without it. I take pictures every single day, and I've been doing this for 17 years, and I'm still learning every single day little bits and pieces about how to take a better video clip, how lighting works in different scenarios. And as long as you continuously work on your craft, and like, say you want to approach a client and you're like, hey, I want to be able to make a video for them, but you're not worth $500 yet because you started 3 weeks ago. Just be like, hey, can I make you a 1-minute video for your business? It'll be free. You can throw it up on social media, and all that I ask is you tag me in the video. And it might not be the greatest video in the world, but it's something that, and then if you go back and watch it later on, you'll be like, wow, like, there's a lot of things that I could have done better. And a lot of that goes into how you shoot, how you edit. All of those things come into play because it all takes time to learn.
And what was that process like for you with your candle making business, as far as finding clients?
So, yeah, for me, like, the biggest thing was I went to every business in town where I live. It's about 30,000 people, which isn't a whole lot compared to some places, but it's a pretty decent town. And I was at 10 different locations. They purchased them probably every 3 months. And then, as far as the custom candles go, I would reach out to larger companies. Like, I've produced for Welch's, several large breweries in the nation. I produced for a company called Bison Union out of Sheridan, Wyoming. And these are orders of like 400 candles at a time. But they're all companies that I would either email or message through Instagram and talk to them personally. And some of these relationships took like 2 years of cultivation, just going back and forth and saying, hey, how's it going? Like, I would love to be able to send you guys some samples and see what you think. And then you wait a couple months, you hear back from them. And, stuff takes time. But in the long run, you got to know that nothing is immediate. Like, nothing happens. Right. And so, like, this candle business is still growing. And for me, it also doesn't help that I'm pulled in several different directions now. So, like, I do a lot of photography and video, more so than the candles. So I spend a lot less time pitching those to new companies. But if all I was doing was candles, every single day I'd be emailing 20 companies, and you might hear back from one, but that one might order five or like $500 or $1,000 worth of candles. And if that goes over well, then they'll reorder and they'll reorder. And I have some companies that reorder 7 times a year, and it's really good.
So yeah, it sounds like it's a combination of actually getting off your ass and doing something versus expecting the clients to come to you, with combining that with some patience and saying, okay, I understand that this could take a little while to cultivate, just being patient with it, and ultimately, the clients will come in. Is that kind of a
Yeah.
cool?
Yeah, because the other thing is a lot of people try to market online through Instagram, and they're competing literally with
Yeah.
everyone in the world. But what they like to realize is there's a ton of people around you in your community or in the several communities surrounding you that might be highly interested in your skills or what you produce. And you just need to go out there and knock on doors, walk into businesses, and cultivate relationships with those
Definitely.
people.
I agree with that. Well, let's move on and talk about one more thing here before we end this one. And by the way, your audio has been coming in very nicely since we called you back, so that's good. So you've talked about
Awesome.
the camera that you have. Let's talk about gear a little bit, because I think a lot of people are interested in that. You have the 1DX Mark II, which is your main camera. But talk a little bit about what kind of lenses do you have, what kind of lighting do you use, just some of your different favorite gear that you use on a regular basis.
Certainly. So Mark II, and my first lens that I bought was a 70 to 200, because the thing that I really did the majority of when I first bought it was photography, and then as soon as I bought it, I really got into video, because that's why I purchased it. We got a 24 millimeter prime 1.4, and that's really my main lens that I shoot video with, because it can get down to 1.4, and you can do really good shots in low
Yeah.
lighting. And I like you, as soon as you get into anything with the zoom, like I would love to get the 16 to 35 millimeter. So you have to bump your ISO a lot more in lower lighting, and then you get a little more grain. And for me, I want the highest amount of clarity possible. I also have a 100 millimeter macro lens, because I do a lot of product photography. And I love the fact that macro lens, everything's in focus, and you can literally be like that far away from the subject and it's still in
Right.
focus. And I would definitely highly recommend that if you're a photographer looking to get into anything other than portraits, get a macro lens. But prior to like a couple of weeks ago, I was using some LED panels as far as lighting. They were just like cheap $50 ones on Amazon, but I just bought 100D Mark II aperture lights that are absolutely amazing, and got the light dome too. They were back ordered, and that's what I'm using right now. And they're only at 50% power because these suckers are
Yeah,
bright.
these video lights, I don't have the aperture lights that would, if that's the optimal that you would want to have, but I've got the Godox SL60W, and just got a 36-inch
Mhm.
softbox on it, and this thing was game changing as far as just like how everything, just my lighting setup. Because before, and actually, by the way, I just published a video yesterday, touring the podcast studio. I talked
Yep.
about this a little bit, showed off the light that I'm using. But prior to that, I used a circular Falcon Eyes light that was about the size of, or the diameter of a basketball or so, and it was a good light, but it just doesn't diffuse. So, and if I have my
Yeah.
shotgun mic overhead, I would get shadows like this. I can put the microphone in front of the softbox, and because it diffuses so much, I don't have to worry about any shadows being cast or anything like that. And the soft light doesn't give any hot
Mhm.
spots on my forehead or anything like that. So definitely a game changer. I know that this kind of stuff can be a little bit more expensive, but if you have a choice between doing something with like a video light and a giant softbox versus using one of those LED panels, in most cases you're going to want to go with the big softbox and video light. That's my 2 cents at least.
Oh yeah.
So cool. What about for like vlogging? I know you've I think some of the videos that I've seen of yours, you typically, it looks like you do more like kind of tripod shots and kind of talking head stuff versus the walking around. I know you did one from the creator retreat where you did some handheld stuff, but when you're vlogging, what kind of
Yep.
setup are you using there?
I use my 1DX because it's
Mhm.
awesome. It's really heavy
Yeah,
though,
it is.
and actually, prior to like a month ago, I had the
Mhm.
Joby 5K. It's massive in the butt to travel with because it doesn't really fit
Yeah.
anywhere. And so I finally got the what is it called?
Switch pod?
The
Yeah, yeah,
Switch Pod. Yep. And I got it because I saw Jevin using it, and I was like, "That is so sleek and thin. It fit right on the side of his bag." And so I got it, and lucky for me, now I travel a lot, and it really comes in handy because it fits like anywhere. It's like probably
yeah.
that thick because it all folds together. And then I use the Rode VideoMic Pro
Mhm.
Plus, and I use that for vlogging, and the audio seems to
It's
be
funny
really
on the
good.
other end of the spectrum, you had Levi Allen, who his version of the Switch Pod was just an actual like full size tripod, like a carbon fiber tripod. He was walking around
Mhm.
holding that thing. Looked pretty funny, but hey, if it works, it works, right? His I guess if it's carbon fiber, it's pretty light and it's going to be pretty versatile because it's an entire freaking podcast or tripod. But anyway, cool, man. Well, that's really all that I had on my list to talk about today. I appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge and coming on and being my guinea pig. And yeah, man, I think we're done.
All right. Well,
Yeah, for sure,
thanks for
man. I
having me.
appreciate it. Always good to have you on. I'm sure we'll do this again. Maybe in a few months from now, we'll have you back on and do an update. But yeah, man, thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon. All
Yeah,
right,
thank
see
you
you,
very
brother.
much. Have a great night.
All right, that was Brendan Halbohm. Thank you to him for coming on. If you are not subscribed to the channel, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe and be sure to follow me on the socials at Ryan Hafey, and we will see you